It's not about the mountains you climb, it's about the journey to get to the top. Okay, ladies, I am back, and today I'm really excited to introduce the interview that I did with Morgan Ruff. Morgan used to be a client of mine, and I believe she's a magical human being. Morgan is, I don't even know what to call her, but she is extremely passionate about the earth, nature, sustainability, and adventure lives in her bones. She grew up in nature and continues to allow it to be a huge part of her life. So a few months ago, actually not even a few, it was the end of August, Morgan and I went hiking up a mountain. And previous to that conversation, or previous to that event, I always said, Morgan, I want you to take me mountain climbing, and want you to take me mountain climbing. So I got on a plane, went to Portland, met her, and we climbed Mount Adams. And Morgan was kind of my guide. And and in this interview, we talk about trusting yourself, trusting your intuition, remembering who you are. We talk about mom guilt. We talk about going after what you want, following your desire. And more importantly than anything, this, experience taught me a lot about trusting myself and pushing through the guilt. I wasn't afraid of the climb. I was afraid of leaving my family. And too often I hear women, using excuses and believing their excuses, but oftentimes we have to pull back the layers and get super crystal clear on what is it that I'm really afraid of? What is it that I'm really resisting here? Because 9 out of 10 times it's not going to be the thing that you think it is. So I hope you get a lot of value from today's interview. And if you do, send me a message on Instagram or post about it on Instagram and tag me at Mom is in Control. Let's dive in.
All right, I'm hitting record. We're recording. Miss Morgan, are you ready?
I'm ready.
So this is Ruff Life Adventure. Morgan Ruff, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
This has been a long time coming. I haven't really talked about the mountain a lot at all, really, on the podcast. Maybe a little bit, but not a recap. And you are the brave soul that made sure I stayed alive for a few days.
It was a team effort.
It was a team effort, but I got to tell you that I 100% knew you were capable of doing this. And I've asked you, what was it, like a year and a half ago?
Yeah, about that.
Maybe not that long ago, but when I found out who you were, what you loved, I'm like, Morgan, can you take me up a mountain one day?
Yeah, and my response was like, absolutely.
Yeah. I always say the magic happens in the action. So what happened when we started to take action? Tell people how we got to know each other and how you got to be the Morgan you are today. Just a little bit about your background so that they know I didn't just randomly say, hey, do you want to go up a mountain with me?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in the Pacific Northwest and very, very connected and close to nature. And so being outside in the wilderness, in nature, has always been a huge part of what I've done and who I am. And so as a child, really my days were spent gazing into tide pools and looking at the natural world, observing whatnot. And so that kind of pulled me into a path of being involved in environmental education and outdoor education. And I have been a whale watching guide and naturalist in all areas, including Alaska, the San Juan Islands, Hawaii. And then I spent about 10 years guiding, doing wilderness kayaking trips up in Southeast Alaska. And those were boat-based kayak trips and just day in and day out, being very in touch and in tune with the rhythm of the day and the tides and how things move and shape. And got to take people out to see glaciers and bears and whales and all sorts of amazing things. And then I came back, got a master's degree in marine policy, and it sort of took me away from that day-to-day connection as I was working in the office and doing those things. So I became a bit of a weekend warrior. And I started mountaineering when I was about 30 years old, and got into ski touring and climbing mountains. And I found it to just be such an important thing to replenish my soul so that I could go back into the office the next day, the next week, and really deliver and bring what I needed to the problems that I was working to solve. So I have a long history of mountaineering and being out in the wild. And one of my favorite things is taking people out and introducing them to these wild places, because I really love seeing what it's like for others as they first experience these things, and as they learn and grow from the challenges that come up just naturally when you're in these kind of extreme environments.
Like sitting in the snow and telling you I'm not moving another fucking inch.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite memories of as I'm looking for where we're going to camp for the night. And you're like, I look down and I'm like, oh man, I think Heather is done.
Yeah. I'm not fucking moving, Morgan. I'm done.
They're like, are you going to camp on the snow?
Like, just give me a minute.
Cool, but
Yeah. Your ass is going to be numb. I don't fucking care. I'm done. You told me 20 minutes ago.
that's what I tell my kids. It's like, how long is it going to be? Another 20 minutes.
Yeah. 3 hours later. So this is amazing. Okay. I mean, there's so much that we could share, but I just want to preface this with how I got to where I am today for us to even have this journey. So it's funny because I feel like I grew up the complete opposite of you.
Yeah.
And I grew up with my parents were divorced. My dad was a workaholic. My mother worked her ass off to provide for me. And I found myself, going from babysitter to grandparent to just pinging around, not having any type of mentorship. And then finding myself in this place where I felt like I didn't have a purpose. I was so disconnected from the earth, from myself, from spirituality, from so much that I just started to slowly die until, most people know my story when cancer woke me up. And I feel like I was wakening before that, but that was just the punch in the face. So counterintuitively deciding my mission in life now is and parenting, of course, and motherhood is a big part of what I talk about, but that was like another awakening for me, right? Like, okay, I need to learn to grow and be so that I can become the best version of myself for these children. But again, we look outside of ourselves and nobody is talking, they're talking about parenting from a science-based perspective or a psychology, but none of this like co-creation. Like, how can I feel full and fulfilled while raising children who are full and fulfilled? And, yes, everyone's going to talk about everybody in therapy, but how can I just find myself happy, content, sustainable, and living with no regrets, not being on my deathbed going, you know what, I totally fucked up my whole life. So while I'm doing that, I'm a big advocate for writing in your journal and journal writing. And I always talk about like, what do you want? What do you crave? What do you desire? And for so long, right, we're all coming back home to ourselves. For so long, I'm like, I want adventure. I want whatever. And I didn't even, none of these things were fostered in me in childhood. And in my 20s, I was a teenager, or I was a parent. So I just, it was so like, how do you take care of everybody else? So I'm looking in my journals. I'm like, Heather, what are you craving? What are you craving? And it's like, run a marathon, climb a mountain, do this, do this. And I never considered myself like an adventure seeker at all. And then I get to this point where I'm like, I'm climbing a fucking mountain. So Morgan enters into my life as a client. I have secret suspicions, like not secret suspicions, secret mission, right? Okay, when we're done working together, she's going to go, the shoe is going to be on the other foot. Morgan's going to lead me up a mountain since I led her up a mountain. And I feel like it came full circle because we'll talk about trust and trusting yourself and all of that. But it's interesting how people are born with different backgrounds and come together and meet each other where they are and go, we need each other, right? Everything's connected. We can learn from one another. And this is the beauty of connection and collaboration and why we need to learn about different perspectives and people. So I kept saying, I want a mountain to climb. I want a mountain to climb. I knew it wasn't about the mountain. I knew it was about so much more. And I said yes to it. We made it happen. And then both of our shits came up. Yes, in a big way, literally and metaphorically. And also very different stuff, very different triggers and wounds. So let's talk about that. Now we've committed to the climb. What's going on?
Oh, yeah. So as soon as we committed to the climb, all of my fear just like came full force, fire hose right to the surface. And I mean, these things are like completely irrational things. I was like, what if the mountain erupts while we're on it? What if I can't self-arrest? What if I can't teach Heather how to self-arrest? Like, I just like all these crazy things that are absolutely not likely to occur were just constantly running in my head. And I was really struggling with like not trusting myself in being your guide and taking you up this mountain. I was like, I just can't do this. But it really didn't come until we actually took the action. And I'm like, okay, she's coming. And then I had to really work hard to figure out how to frame those fears in a way that they weren't going to stop me and recognize them for what they were, which are just, scary stories that I was telling myself.
Yeah. And I just show up with a backpack, some clothes, and you had everything planned. It was amazing.
Yeah, I even had enough clothes for you that you didn't even have to bring anything.
I know. It was awesome. What came up for me was guilt.
Oh, huge. Yeah.
Yeah. Like guilt. I know that came up for you a little bit too, but I felt so guilty for leaving my family, and it wasn't, my husband didn't care. He was like, go for it. I mean, we were gone for like 4 days or something, 4 or 5 days. I was, we were only gone for a few, but I just didn't, I'm like, Heather, stop. Like this guilt is running your life. And I know I'm not alone when I say that. It's either guilt or fear. And I wasn't afraid. I fully trusted you. I wasn't afraid. I'm like one foot in front of the other, right? It's not like a marathon where you just have to keep running and running and running. I'm like, you're literally walking. The worst thing I have to do, which I did, was just stop walking. Or it's not like skydiving where you don't have control, right? It's like 1, 2, 3, jump.
Right.
So I wasn't afraid at all. It didn't even dawn on me that we were climbing a volcano and it could erupt. I didn't even think about any of that stuff. I'm like, worst case scenario, I'm going to be eating protein bars for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But I completely trusted you. I just felt immense guilt. And I think under the core of it was like, how dare you fulfill a soul need? How dare you feel good? How dare you? That was the conversation. So I just was like, fuck you, little negative monkey mind. I'm going to do what my soul craves and see what happens. So what was it like then? Okay, so then I'm there and then we start. Then what happens?
Yeah, I mean, just to circle back just quickly, like, I think the guilt thing and the fear, for me, like, I feel like as a woman in the wilderness, I just really had a hard time remembering and trusting my wilderness skills, especially after having children. I was saying, like, what feels like a totally different experience heading out the door, leaving my two girls behind, and stepping out on this grand adventure, and not kind of including them. But one of the things that I realized as I was processing and as we were kind of moving out the door, was that they're sitting there and watching me and learning from me and sharing this experience with me. And so my guilt of leaving them behind and asking my husband to, do the extra solo parenting, came full circle when I came back and my daughter, 4-year-old, looked at me and she said, "Mommy, next time, can I climb the mountain with you?" And I'm like, oh my God, she was there. And this experience, even though it was me actively out there, as a family unit, we were all there, and it was a shared experience in some ways. So it was one of the key observations I had as I kind of processed through the guilt and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So
talk about trusting yourself.
Trusting yourself. So, this is something I have struggled with for so long. And despite the fact that I have, 15, 20 years of experience backpacking, mountaineering, guiding in like extreme conditions, I found that, I took a break from a lot of the harder stuff when I had children. And there was this kind of mental shift that happened in my mind when I had children of like, oh, I can't do that anymore. It's too extreme. It's too dangerous, whatever it is that kind of kept me away from it. And I felt like my job is to be here with the kids in our little safe space, and putting myself out there just felt too hard. But as you invited me into this experience, and as I started to kind of move through it, I really had to dig deep and start to remember, oh, right, I know how to do this. I have done this a million times. I know what to do in emergencies. I have, wilderness first aid training. Like, there is plenty under my belt that can allow me to do this. And really, I'm just kind of keeping myself small and in a box, and I'm using my kids as an excuse to not do the things that actually truly fill my cup. They really challenge me. And it's sort of just, I had to recognize that what I was doing is just trying to stay small and letting my excuses run the show, and just completely separate myself from those. I did a ton of journaling to get through that, and more than I ever expected I would need to do just to get us up to the mountain.
And I had no idea. It went off like, I don't know. I felt very safe. I felt very like I trusted you. You were a little concerned about water on day one, but other than that, we were good to go.
You gotta have water.
We always had an immense amount of water, but the first day we were like, shit, I don't know if we're going to have enough water. We need to get to the second location. I'm like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? But once we got there, we were fine.
Yes, it was a perfect spot.
Once we found water, you were happy.
Yeah, water makes me happy.
Yes. Oh God. And you really get to know someone when you have to poop with them.
And I'm very happy that you were open to the leave no trace principles of being out in the wilderness.
I wanted to get my sticker.
Yeah. You don't always get stickers, but that was pretty exceptional.
Yes, that was amazing. What was the mountain for you? Like, what was the actual mountain that you were climbing?
For me, it's just getting back and sinking back into that trust in myself, and all the preparation and everything leading up to the mountain, that felt like a steep, hard climb. And then as soon as our feet hit the dirt path, I was like, I got this. No problem. This is like, oh, this is in my bones. I know what I'm doing. But everything leading up to it, woo-wee, that was the steep part.
And then what about, because we did not actually make it to summit. So how did you think about that?
Well, that's all part of mountaineering. I mean, you go as a team and you make decisions as a team and you help each other. And I think it's about the journey, not the destination. And so we didn't make it to the top, but that's, getting to the top is you're only halfway there anyway. You still have to come all the way back down.
I know you kept saying that too. I was like, damn it, she's right.
I know, you can't spend all your energy just getting to the top. You have to save some for coming down.
Yeah, I'm very I don't want to use the word confident, but grateful. I feel content that we stopped where we did and turned back around. One, I felt awful at that elevation. As you knew, I woke up and was not feeling well.
Yeah. Well, and those are important signs and symptoms to watch. I think you started to have some, if we had stayed another day, you probably would have adjusted, but it was definitely, you were feeling the altitude.
Yeah.
And, you were a little stumbly too.
Yeah. I felt very drunk and that was very hard in the morning. And I feel like, I would have had to sit there all day feeling like shit. And that would have been awful just to, maybe acclimate so that we could go the next day, but the conditions weren't great either.
Yeah, no. But I think that one of the things that I think is really interesting about this type of mountaineering. So we were up at about 9,000 feet and the summit is 12,200 or so. And so you really do start to feel the altitude and it's like you're out there on an adventure and you have to be comfortable with feeling icky, like a slight headache. You're usually a little dehydrated. You're just uncomfortable. You're sleeping on the ground. And so part of this experience is how do I still find joy and learn from this experience, even though I feel like crap?
And the fine line of knowing when to give up.
Absolutely.
When it is detrimental to your health versus just suck it up, buttercup.
Right. And what was so amazing about this is that you got down even just a couple thousand feet and you're like, oh, wow, I feel 90% better.
Yeah. And then that made me want to turn back and go, okay, now I want to do it. But the beauty of that was old me, even 6 months ago or a year ago, would have beat myself up and felt like a failure because we didn't get to summit. Mm-hmm. I think that's the beauty of it. I think I kept telling you that. What did I say to you about my go-to is to show up 70%, not 100%? Mm-hmm. Because when I show up 100%, I'm going to burn myself out. But if I just show up 70%, I can be consistent and sustainable and actually get further.
Yeah. And so much about going up a mountain is learning how to manage your energy so that you can make it to where you're supposed to go and then knowing your limits and where you need to turn around.
So what surprised you about me?
You're so calm. You show up to this is the second tallest mountain in Washington State. It's, the approach is non-technical, but it's a big deal. And you're just all right, let's do this. All right. You're so just I got this, and just one step in front of the other.
I've never climbed a mountain, but I've done worse things.
Yes, absolutely. And I think I was, as you were coming up the snowfield, right before you sat down on your bum and said, I'm not going any further, I was saying, what's the hardest thing you've ever done? What's the hardest thing you've ever experienced? Just think about that right now when you feel like you're, just done and over. And you're like, Merton, this is the hardest thing.
But But it was, but it's only hard because that's the only thing I could see in the moment, right? Because I'm not digging deeper. But the beauty of this is when something over consumes you. Like I knew in that moment, this too shall pass. Like I'm not going to die up here. I'm actually not stopping. I'm just taking a break.
Right.
And was I tired? Was I fatigued? Like, I don't even know what the thing was that was stopping me. I'm like, is this over yet? I want to be at my final destination. So it could be impatience. It could be whatever, right? But too often we're like, this wasn't as easy as I thought it was. Well, suck it up, buttercup. Like you still have a little bit to go. So rest, recharge, but you literally are going up or down. There's no other option, right? Like you can't give up. If you give up, you're just going to sit there. You can't even pitch a tent on the fucking where we were. So
you're just going to have a cold ass,
and you just wait until your tantrum is over and then you continue, right? So I knew I was going to continue. I was just frustrated from feeling like it's 20 more minutes. So I understand your 20 more minutes is 3 hours now. And also I feel like something that I personally learned, I mean, there's so many things that I discovered, but when you're looking at a mountain, you're like, wow, that's a big mountain. But the closer you get to it, you realize that's a fucking ginormous mountain. And then when you're on it and you see a horizon coming, you think it's going to take you 10 minutes to get somewhere. And an hour later, you were just going over it. Yeah. But then you turn around and you look at how far you've come, and you've come so far. So it is a total mind fuck because you're literally looking up, going one foot in front of the other, looking up and going, I don't feel like I'm moving at all. And then you turn around and you're like, look how far I've come.
Yeah.
So for me, that was a big one.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's a sense of feeling completely powerful and totally insignificant at the same time. It's like when you're out there, you're holding these opposing realities in the same moment. And, you're on this ginormous landscape and your sense of scale is totally thrown off. Yet your own power is propelling you forward and taking you up this really foreign and rugged landscape. And so you're just constantly holding those two things forward. There's a sense of like peace and calm, yet like massive power as the wind is just like beating down on you. And so you're constantly in the sense of contrasts and holding all these dualities, and they're all one thing. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but that's kind of the way I feel about it.
Yeah. And it just reminds me of, it's like art and it's a metaphor for life. And so much of, I don't know. I mean, once you do it, you're kind of addicted to that feeling. And I'm sitting here doing work in my office and my computer, and I'm like, I just want nature.
It's so true. Yeah. Well, it's so important. And like the thing that I share with people often is that you have wild places in your backyard. Everybody does. Like there's wild places in the middle of an urban environment. You just need to kind of be open to seeing them and finding them. It might be a column of ants walking along the sidewalk, or, uncovering bugs in your garden. There's so much wildness everywhere. And I think these big experiences help us remember, oh yeah, that connection is so important to me. That connection is such a part of what I need to feel. Well, for me, speaking for me, this is a part of my spiritual connection. It's a part of feeling connected to other people when I get to go out with them. It's a part of just filling my cup. But I don't have to have these massive experiences every day. Like these things are also available to me in just the moment to moment and the day to day if I'm just open to seeing and receiving them.
Yeah. And for me, a lot of times it's like the mental mountain of okay, what mental mountain do I have to climb today? And I feel like I climbed one this morning. I woke up and I'm like, I want to go back to bed. I'm like, Heather, it's a non-negotiable today. Like, yes, you probably could be lazy for an hour or so, but you kind of took that time on the weekend. So get up, do what you put on your list in alignment with energetic time management. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I had to climb that mental mountain this morning, and now I can see the wheels are turning. But it took a lot this morning for me to choose to put one foot in front of the other instead of just giving in to the comfort of going with the flow, meaning going like living by default, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did the whole experience, what did it inspire you to do? I know you've been on this journey of like, what is that for me? So what are you up to?
Well, this experience really showed me that I have more to give than what I have been, providing in the world. And so I'm really excited about exploring different platforms for sharing various stories of experiences that I have had, and building a community of people who are also interested in kind of how nature plays into our lives. I work in the environmental community, and for many of us, we have this deep sense of despair and this sense of anxiety over what the future is going to be given climate change and the mass extinction events that we're having in our days. And so part of what I am interested in doing is developing a community where we can hold that space for each other and really explore, how do you find joy and how do you bring ease and flow into your work environment so that you can continue to be creative, you can continue to be open, and you can continue to show up in the way that we all need to as change makers in this world. And so that's gonna look like a podcast. I'm still working out the details of that, but I'm hoping to launch in early 2020.
Yay! That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
I find there's something that you just said. You're like, okay, we have all these negative things happening in the world, but how are we finding joy? And it's all the same thing. People say, what's my life purpose? What's my purpose? I'm like, the purpose of anybody's life is to find and experience joy. I think Dalai Lama said that too. And I used to overcomplicate the process. Like, I need to find, because it's even marketable, right? Like, I need to find my purpose so that I can make a difference in the world and make an impact. And it's like, you can make an impact just being a joyful person and smiling at the person in the grocery store. And when we're bringing together what we're passionate about, which for you is nature and, not understanding climate change, but just being very intertwined with nature and bringing voice and community to that. Mine could be motherhood or parenting, but yet it is similar.
Absolutely.
But very different.
Right. Well, and I think the motivation, like for me, one of the quotes that really resonates for me is that we did not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. It's from Chief Sealth, tribal leader who signed the treaties back in the 1850s here in the Pacific Northwest. And that's such a motivator for me. It's like remembering that, like, what we are doing here on this planet, how we are living our lives, this is something that we are borrowing from our children and our grandchildren. And so how can we create a world that we are proud of passing on to that next generation? And how can we be leaders in that world and creating the changes that we want?
I love it.
Yeah.
Be the change you want to see. And is all about, we don't have to call it legacy, but just truly waking up and asking yourself, if you ask yourself, am I making an impact? Am I making a difference? Right now in this moment, I just have that aha moment where some days, I see so many hustling, right? Trying to make that impact, trying to make that difference, and trying to fight for your worth, and realizing you're putting one foot in front of the other and you're turning around. It is that mountain. You're like,
Right.
Look how far I've come. And the summit, there's going to be that fucking false summit. And then there's going to be the next one. And then you're going to be like, what's the next mountain I can climb? Like, you're always going to have this sense of never enough or what's next. But it is truly just saying, I did it. I showed up. I put one foot in front of the other, and something happened. And even though on this big scale, I feel so insignificant, but yet we were making an impact in our worlds, which will trickle out. And like you said, your daughter saying, can you bring me next time?
Yeah, absolutely. And remembering that, like, taking this time for yourself and truly fulfilling the thing that you are craving and your desires, that is a part of creating that ripple effect. And you never know, by living in alignment with who you truly are and what you really need, how you are creating good in the world.
Yeah.
Because you're coming from this place of wealth and goodness instead of, lack or challenge.
Yeah. It was interesting to come home. I told you before we left, my son was my oldest. He's almost 15, and he went on some camping adventure last year. He's like, you don't know what you're getting yourself into, Mom. And then I come home. He's like, so was I right? How sore are you? How bad was it? And I'm like, I feel really good, actually. And he's like, you're lying. You're lying. But it's the beauty of that, like being able to have those memories and connections with them. Like, oh, you're human too. Like, you went on an adventure. Tell me about your adventure. It's, we have to reframe our mind into the time lost with our children, into the experiences gained, right? Like who I've become because of that experience. And also now, Morgan, I have to say, you gave me the confidence. I came home and said, well, I don't really want to climb another mountain tomorrow, but I want to go backpacking, and I feel confident that I can do that now.
Yeah, absolutely.
You gave that to me.
Take the kids with you this time.
Yes. Oh yeah. They're like, let's go. But I wouldn't have been able to do that. Like, that's the ripple effect, right? Like, you gave me that experience. And so that it's like you've passed the baton of confidence and trust, where I'm like, okay, what's the worst? I'm not going to go deep into the woods by ourselves, but we can go on a very well-traveled place and, have our little backpacks and hopefully keep ourselves alive for a day or two. But it's like,
I know you can do it.
Just start somewhere. I know if I have some goo and tortillas, I'm good to go.
Yes, absolutely. Goo and tortillas apparently are the winning combination.
Espresso goo flavor. And it's like, you got to try this. Oh, and almond butter. That's what the other was.
Yes, and almond butter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Morgan, I just have to say thank you so much. Thank you for trusting me to, as always, push you to do something. But it was amazing. And I just felt like I've known you forever.
I know, it really did feel like that. It was so easy to be together in the tiny little tent.
Yeah.
In the middle of, gusting 40, 50 mile an hour wind.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, are we sleeping in this? Like, is this just for you? Nope, it's for both of us. Okay.
Get cozy.
Yeah. And we did, and it worked. And you made us coffee and gourmet mac and cheese, and we made it work.
We did. And it was magical. And, I think that landscape has really stuck with me, and I've been doing watercolors of of our campsite, just really continue to reflect on that whole experience. And I don't know, the resilience of that place and how that feeds into my own personal resilience.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I know you probably won't have the podcast before this goes out. So I know you're on Instagram a lot. Where can people find you?
Yeah, I think Instagram is the best spot for me right now. I'm also on Facebook, and I am at Morgan Ruff Uplift, and it's RUFF, like the dog bark. And so there I share my stories. I share more about finding hope. I share a lot about the tools that I use that have been most helpful for me to create more resilience in my life and more sustainability. And then I, share all my foibles of living a little bit more rural life. We have chickens and beehives and a garden that really only produces tomatoes and so all the different things that come along with living as simple and close to the land as we can.
Amazing. Well,
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I really appreciate the time with you, Heather. It was really fun.